Morning, everyone. Today is Thursday. Remember, it's just a reading only day, but I'm going to read to you guys and enjoy it. There's going to be no questions afterwards, but you can still think and visualize through the story and come up with maybe some prediction on what's going to happen. This chapter is chapter 6, and it is about Alice again. So let's see what's going to happen here. And it is still School Spirit Week. Have on my purple for epilepsy awareness. So I hope you guys are wearing your purple too. All right, here we go. Good morning, learners, sang Phil 4 weeks after Alice's arrival as he stood outside the bunk Ladybug's window. The 7th grade girls' bunk had been called Bunk 7 until a week before, when Phil and Lori decided that numbers were hierarchical, and the hierarchies were, by their very nature, very unfair. So they decided to change the bunks to names of insects or birds. "The earth says hello," he screams out. Alice peeked out the window to see Phil had covered his narrow rectangular face with paint. Lately, he's been favoring blue, and braided his beard. It hung like a second tongue dangling at the center of his chest. In the bed beside her, Alice heard Tally sniffle, then reach for her inhaler, then her embroidery hoop, and the sound of Rhea's footsteps as she danced through the fencing warm-up, slashing and stabbing at her imaginary opponent. Alice had already been awake for an hour. She'd gone for her morning run through the woods and then walked back along the lakeshore to her cabin, with wet leaves slipping underneath her feet and a cool breeze ruffling her hair. She got out of bed, clinched the elastic band around her mane, made sure her socks weren't muddy, and pulled a fleece sweatshirt over her plain blue t-shirt, feeling grateful the way she felt every time she changed her clothes that the center had no uniforms. Alice and the rest of the student body had been encouraged to treat fashion as a vehicle for self-expression, which meant that she could wear anything as long as it wasn't see-through or low-cut and it didn't have a logo or brand name. "Our bodies are not billboards," they said, "for corporate America." That was Lori's motto. As the summer weather cooled and the air got crisp with a wintry bite to the wind, Alice wore mostly yoga pants and fleece, elastic waist, and oversized clothes she hoped hoping she wouldn't grow out of before the semester ended. Tally layered tights and leggings and long-sleeve thermal shirts beneath her hand-sewn jumpers, which she'd made with extra pockets for handkerchiefs and medication. Rhea wore athletic gear, leggings made of sweat-wicking fabric, and zippered nylon jackets, and proclaimed her a member of the junior national fencing team. As Phil started up with his cowbell, the girls gathered their books and laptops and headed out of the cabin. Alice began her day with intentional weeding, while Tally did morning meditation. Rhea had gotten special permission to go and fence. The next activity was daily conversation, with the learners assembled in a semicircle beneath Mother Tree. Phil and Lori would talk about the day, whether there was anything special planned, and whether there were any changes to the rules. Then the learners and guides would march to the lodge for breakfast, the object of which Alice sometimes thought for Kate, the center's cook, to get many grains as possible into otherwise normal food. There had been 7-grain porridge, 12-grain toast, and apples, which the center got by the bushel from a neighboring orchard. Learning sessions, which in Alice's previous school had been called classes, were held outside during good weather. Abigail would take a group of kids down to the shore of the lake, and the learners would take turns reading aloud from and then discussing Of Mice and Men. Or Terry would teach algebra underneath Mother Tree. There was another break for lunchtime. Alice would usually wander into the forest or take out a canoe with Tally. Rhea would sometimes join them, resting on her belly in the middle of the boat with a book propped up against her. Tally and Rhea weren't her friends. They hardly even tried to talk to her on the water or at nutrition. Then they all sat together at one of the 2 long tables that ran the length of the lodge, but at least they weren't mean to her. Rhea would press her lips together into a tight line and sigh when Alice knocked over the swords that Rhea left by the door or interrupted her practice, and Tally snapped, "Didn't I tell you not to touch that?" after Alice had sometimes elbowed Tally's neti pot to the floor. But they didn't go out of their way to torment her, which made a nice change for Alice. Lunch, mid-morning nutrition, was at 1 o'clock. The food was, as Alice had feared, mostly vegetarian with an occasional fish on Fridays. Whatever enjoyment the learners might have found from the pan-fried flounder or grilled brook trout was severely diminished by Lori's lengthy pre-dinner blessing, during which she urged everyone to honor the soul and spirit of the animal, that its flesh might enrich and strengthen us. In the afternoon, there were special sports or music lessons, drama or choir. Alice worked in the garden alongside Clem, who was cheerful round face and spent 6 years following a band called Fish around before settling down at the center. Then there was more free time for homework or quiet contemplation, which for younger kids meant naps and then dinner. Even though she missed cheeseburgers and steak, Alice was learning to like food at the center. Lentil soups and black bean burritos, vegetarian lasagna made with soy cheese, 5-bean salad, and purified tofu mash. Everything was made of fresh herbs and unusual spices. Everything tasted interesting, which was an improvement over the meals at Swifton or Miss Pratt's. Kate had noticed Alice on the third night when Alice had asked for a second helping of lentil soup. "It's delicious," she said. And Kate, who wore black dresses and an enormous white apron and seemed to frown all the time, had given Alice a hard look. "Cumin," she finally said. A few nights later, when Alice complimented on her whole grain biscuits, Kate said, "Thank you." If this keeps going, Alice thought, she'll say an entire sentence by Christmas. But it ended up not taking that long. One night, after Alice had devoured the tofu tiki marsala, Kate said, "I do cooking classes on Wednesday nights, if you're interested, Alice." Alice was absolutely interested. When she arrived at the lodge on Wednesday, Kate was waiting for her, with her hair covered in a handkerchief, her body covered in a white crisp apron that hung past her knees. Alice looked around, but she didn't see any other learners. This was totally fine for her. "Brioche," Kate announced, pulling out a basket of eggs, a crock of butter, and after a quick glance over her shoulder, white sugar and white flour, which she removed from a locked cupboard in the back of the kitchen. "Cooking is a science," Kate began. She had a low, gruff voice, and she spoke so quietly that Alice had to lean close to listen. "Most of it, if you follow the recipe, you get what you want, not like life," she said and sighed. Before Alice could figure out how to ask Kate what that meant, Kate was sliding a thick cookbook across the table. "How to Cook Everything" was written on the cover. The book's bristles with Post-its and notes and scraps of paper. The pages were wavy and had gotten wet or grease on it at some point. But this was a fantastic thing for Alice. She could learn how to cook recipes, put notes, ingredients, what to add, extra things, and she cooked, and if kids liked it, it is what it is. By the end of the first month at the center, Alice had cooked brioche and angel food cake and pound cake and was moving on to breads and soups. "Not bad," Kate had said to her, tasting a spoonful of whatever Alice had prepared, adjusting the seasoning, sometimes giving Alice one of her rare smiles. When the lesson was over, she let Alice wrap up a few cookies or slices of cake to take back to the bunk or to tuck into her backpack and eat after her run in the morning. Alice was almost afraid to admit it, even to herself, but she liked the experimental center. Tally and Rhea left her alone after she declined their invitation to learn how to fence or to sew, invitations they probably only offered just to be polite. After Alice had turned them down twice, it seemed like they'd got some secret agreement to keep their distance, which was totally fine with Alice. The three of them were unfailingly polite to one another. Rhea and Tally would deal with whatever new havoc Alice had caused with a minimum of sighs and eye rolls. They're getting used to her being clumsy. Rhea had a best friend, an older girl, a fellow fencer named Alana, and everyone liked Tally, who could mend rips and tears and replace lost buttons. Most of the guides were nice. Clem showed her how to make a salt scrub using coconut oil and lavender. The previous year's learner had grown and dried, and Terry had taught her math, turned out to be very patient, even when Alice needed things explained more than once. Alice had her books of Greek mythology and her sketch pads, and she drew flowers and the lake and the mountains rising behind them. She had solitude in her morning runs and pleasure of the treats that she had tucked away. She was too busy to ever really feel lonely or feel bad when other kids got care packages or letters from home. The only mails she ever got from New York City were New York City themed postcards from Lee and a note from Miss Merriweather that came on monogram stationery that said, "I hope you are doing well." Alice was feeling good that morning as she walked down toward daily conversation, munching on a slice of banana walnut bread, her body warm and relaxed after her run. She was so lost in her thoughts about the day ahead, English, then a walk in the woods, a nap after lunch, and then a cooking lesson, that she almost didn't notice the black town car cruising down the dirt path in a cloud of dust. "Hey, watch out!" Tally cried. Rhea looked up from her books, and the car jerked to a stop inches away from her hip. A black-faced chauffeur in a suit and a black cap got out of the car, walked to the rear door and pulled it open, and a girl who was about their age, who looked nothing like any of them or like any of the other girls at the center, emerged. Her scent was what Alice noticed first, a sweet mix of honeysuckle, raspberry, and coconut shampoo that gave her the smell of a fruit salad left in the refrigerator for way too long. The girl at the center of this aromatic cloud had shiny brown hair that hung in waves to the small of her back and a heart-shaped face with glossed, pouted lips. She wore a black skirt, cinched tight at the waist, pointed toe, black patent leather shoes, and a white silk blouse. Earrings twinkled from her lobes, and a gold bangle circled around her wrist. Her eyes were hidden behind dark glasses, but her frown was not hidden at all. "What a dump!" she said, and tilted her nose a few degrees higher into the air. "This is even worse than the farm we were at last year." "Hey, your driver almost hit us," Tally said. The girl tossed her hair. "You were standing in the middle of the road," she said, "such as it is," pulling off her dark glasses, and she turned towards Alice. "And you are?" Alice cleared her throat. "Alice Mayfair." "She's from New York," said Tally. "Congratulations." The girl didn't even try to sound sincere. "You should be more careful," said Alice, feeling suddenly protective toward her cabin mates. Rhea, who read fencing books while she walked between sessions, would probably wander right into traffic if there hadn't been a traffic sign at the center for her to wander into. And Tally was so congested all the time that she probably couldn't even hear cars approaching. "Oh, really?" sneered the girl. Then she whirled, her skirt flaring around, and at the sound, Phil and Laurie approaching put on their fakest smiles Alice had ever seen. "Hello, guides," she caroled. "I'm sorry I'm late, but I am finally here." This is going to be interesting. Not sure who she is, but I guess we'll find out. I hope you guys are having a good day, enjoying your relaxing day, just reading and finishing up on the work that you have. Like I said, there's no questions to follow. Just listen to the story and enjoy it. Our next chapter, we're going back to Jeremy. Let's see what he figures out. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.